Hi, I am Waylon. My group members are Sophia and Franklin, and our theme is religion. Religion, the enemy to freedom. Religion has an enormous impact on society and still does to this day. Religion often controls culture and people's belief in many countries. This control becomes problematic when it comes to Abrahamic religions like Christianity that use a totalitarian structure to control thinking. This structure is very problematic towards people's social freedom. George Orwell writes about this idea in his novel 1984. During the late end of George Orwell's life, he gained a more critical eye towards Christianity and its control over people. His distaste for Catholicism is displayed through the government in 1984. In 1984, Orwell warns of a totalitarian theocratic pseudo-government, depicted as Ingsoc in the novel, which he uses to warn how religion can control how people act and think. Ingsoc as a religious allegory. Our first evidence is on page 17, where Orwell writes, "At this moment, the entire group of people broke into a deep, slow, rhythmical chant of BB, 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 over and over again, very slowly." This quote connects Big Brother within the novel of 1984 to religious-like figures such as God, and Ingsoc as the religion. This allegory is used to criticize how figures are used to falsely humanize powerful groups by depicting itself as a singular person. It criticizes how religion uses figures and saviors to mask the other things they do, and control people into believing religion is good and to worship its control. The second evidence is on page 148, where Orwell writes, "On the 6th day of Hate Week, after the processions, the speeches, the shoutings, the singing, the banners, the posters, the hills, the waxworks, the rolling of drums, and the squealing of trumpets, the tramp of marching feet, the grinding of caterpillars or the tanks, the roar of the massed planes, the booming of the guns, after 6 days of this." This quote is meant to create a connection between Hate Week and Holy Week. This criticizes how religion often controls people's feelings. In 1984, Hate Week controls hate, while in Christianity, Holy Week controls happiness and sadness. Also, this is used to criticize how religion often tries to set apart days solely dedicated to religion and its affairs. Hate Week being dedicated to hate, and Holy Week being dedicated to Jesus. The third quote is on page 339, where O'Brien tells Winston, "We are the priest of power. God is power." This quote is a direct reference to religion. It is criticizing how religion has a totalitarian structure and the priests command a lot of power over people's lives within the religion and control their freedom. Our fourth quote is on page 258, where O'Brien says to Winston, "The worst thing in the world, in your case, the worst thing in the world happens to be rats." This quote demonstrates how Room 101 within the novel is a representation of hell. Room 101 is the embodiment of someone's worst fears and endless pain. Orwell is criticizing how religion controls people's actions with endless pain and fear. He is criticizing how actions are controlled by religion through overly harsh punishments, like the idea of sins within Christianity. Our final quote is on page 245, where Orwell writes, "Two gin-scented tears trickled down the sides of his nose. But it was all right. Everything was all right. The struggle was finished. He had won the victory over himself. He loved Big Brother." Page 245. This quote is Orwell criticizing how religion often just uses its followers for its own personal gain and harms people. However, it also demonstrates and criticizes the process that religion uses to regain control over people through the public confessions. Gay marriages. In modern times, despite gay marriages being legalized in 2015, the Christian community still won't accept the idea of same-sex marriage. The church encouraged its followers to deny and ignore these ideas. The Bible was written in a patriarchal culture that assumed that men must have all the power in the relationship, with a woman being seen as an object rather than an actual person. The church still supports this culture in the modern day and controls its followers to think in the outdated fashion. While the world has evolved and moved on, religion, and specifically Christianity, has tried to maintain control over people by perpetuating these old and outdated virtues. Religion is trying to stop the evolutions of belief by controlling what people should think and believe. Religion doesn't want society and people to advance towards freedom, just like the government in 1984 doesn't want people to think for themselves. In modern life, religion still controls much of what people think, just like the religion of Ingsoc does in 1984. Places of worship and COVID-19. Our second current event is the COVID-19 outbreak of 2020. In the United States, certain places of worship are still open for service, such as funerals and general worshiping. Those who still go to these places reason that the pandemic is not as serious as the world makes it, that those who pray are safe from the virus, and that those prayers are needed now more than ever. One such instance of church services continuing is the funeral held by Bishop Timothy Titus Scott. He was a pastor from the St. James Temple Church of God in Christ in Clarksdale, Mississippi. He tested positive for COVID-19 and died shortly after. The virus can exist in the body for a long time without any symptoms, which is a concern as he could have exposed the virus to up to over 300 people that were at the funeral service, which was held a little before he was tested positive. In 1984, the citizens of Oceania were controlled by Ingsoc, feeding them certain notions such as the necessary action of ratting out any thought criminals. This resulted in the deaths of many people in the novel. In today's world, religion can feed notions like being untouchable during a crisis simply because they said prayers could save them. This mindset can risk people's lives, seen in the potential exposure of around 300 people to a deadly virus because a funeral service was held when people should be in self-quarantine. 1984's warnings heeded? George Orwell's warning of a totalitarian, theocratic government has finally been heeded in one way or another in modern times. The Islamic Republic of Iran is a theocracy governed by an autocratic ruler with elements of a presidential democracy under him. In 2018, there were protests in Iran by an angry and impoverished group against the reformist Iranian President Hassan Rouhani and the supreme leader Ali Khamenei. These protests are against the Republic government to demonstrate how people are going against the religion that control their lives. They are fighting for better wages and living. These protests serve to show how far Iran has come. They have reached a point where the people have realized how much religion has control over their freedom. In addition, the protests became widely publicized thanks to the internet and technology, allowing for both Iranian people to show their situation as well as compare it to others. Furthermore, the government under President Hassan Rouhani has actually worked to increase more social freedom for its middle class, yet the supreme leader still maintains control. So while the Presidential Democratic Party is moving away from religion control, it is still there. However, this event does show the progress from religious control and the overall progress of the world moving away from the dystopian totalitarian theocratic government Orwell predicted, as seen with Iran and the masses trying to go against the government. In conclusion, George Orwell's 1984 warned us of a religion creating a series of ideas that control the masses. Unfortunately, even in the modern era, religion has maintained its control over how people think and act. Religion forces people to think against gay marriage, and it influences people to go against their own safety to go to crowded and dangerous places during the COVID-19 crisis. While state religion control, like Iran, may be moving away from the totalitarian theocratic state of religious control, religion still maintains the cultural control over people, and we must work to fight against it.